The big, beautiful bill and potentially the biggest investment theme of a lifetime. That's what we're going to talk about this week on Milkshakes, Markets, and Madness. And the reason we're going to talk about this is I think everybody has heard of the big, beautiful bill by now. This was a bill passed, I don't know, 3 months ago. It's expected to cost $3.5 trillion over the next 10 years. Everybody knows that it's big. Everybody knows that Donald Trump loves it. Everybody knows that it's going to contribute greatly to the national debt. But I think there's a core provision of it that perhaps has gone unnoticed. And it's an incredible opportunity for those who realize it's there. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let me just pull this up. But again, the big, beautiful bill was passed, or I think it was passed earlier this year, and it was enacted on July 4th. And it's essentially a comprehensive industrial and revitalization / national security act. The whole idea is it's supposed to infuse the Defense Department, the national infrastructure, and it's supposed to reorganize the supply chain by giving preferred funding and initiatives. And the idea, obviously, is to get off of the need for supplies from China and reduce our dependence on the rest of the world, and basically bring the potential for self-sufficiency in all things. We have self-sufficiency in a lot of things, but we don't have self-sufficiency in all things. But the idea is ultimately to get the self-sufficiency back under our national sovereignty. And as part of this, this goes back to, we've talked about this all year, and we've written about it extensively in our research, but this is all part of the global divorce that is taking place between the United States and China, and perhaps you could even say the West and the global South. But essentially, the government sees this as an existential issue, and reducing the supply chain dependence on China is literally at the top of their list of priorities. And so they're treating this as a national security interest, and they're working on it at warp speed. And there's a lot of people out there who have said it's going to take the U.S. 10, 20 years to solve this. And even then, they're not going to be able to do it. Other people have said it's going to be 2 years because it's Operation Warp Speed. Listen, it's not going to be 2 years, but it's not going to be 20 either. And remember, this is still the United States. They still do have a lot of resources, and they are putting this at the top of their agenda. And so the number's probably more like 4, 5, 6 years, but it's not going to be 10 or 20. But let's just keep walking through what this is. The part that I think that people have quite not realized is that the Pentagon itself received a specific funding from the Big Beautiful Bill. And this Big Beautiful Bill funding is aimed at a specific thing, and that is it's aimed to strengthen the defense industrial base. Now, I think people realize that they're going to be investing in national security companies and defense companies. I don't think that's a big surprise, but how they're going about it, I don't think has been widely telegraphed. But again, this is part of a larger, broader national security investment. But the Pentagon itself is receiving $100 billion that they can then use to go out and make loans to companies that are part of a broader national investment strategy. Now, the way this works is so it's established by the Department of Defense, or you can call it now the Department of War. But the idea is to partner the Department of Defense with private capital and then go invest that capital into companies, some of them small, some of them large, but companies that are creating the products that the government needs to meet these national security interests. And the idea is to focus on two different things, crucial technologies and critical infrastructure. And the idea is they will use loans, guarantees, and co-investments to bring private industry expertise and efficiency along with government funding. And again, the idea is to treat this as kind of the highest national priority in order to revamp the U.S. manufacturing and defense capabilities. So think of it this way, the big beautiful allocated 500 billion, which then can enable up to 100 billion of long-term government loans. So basically these, and again, it's going to be aimed at these critical technology companies and critical minerals, but it's not just going directly to the companies. What they're going to do is they are going to match funding that comes from the private sector. And the way that is going to work is they're going to provide the subsidy, but they're going to be matched by the private investments that are raised by private equity funds or investment managers in the private industry. So rather than the Department of Defense or some government agency going out and making these loans, they are bringing in the expertise of Wall Street veterans to go and make these loans on their behalf and allow for investors to co-invest alongside of them. So think of it, again, we've kind of covered this, but the most important thing are these critical minerals and advanced technologies. So this is not for just all different kinds of companies. It is for a specific, at least this program. And listen, this program could obviously grow much and expand much over the next couple of years. And I would actually expect that to happen. But right now, this is mainly focused squarely at the critical minerals and advanced technology. And the reason that is, and again, this is fairly obvious to some people, but for those who are not familiar with this topic, the reason that that is the focus is that is the trump card, no pun intended, that China currently holds. China currently dominates critical minerals, not so much on the advanced technology, but definitely on the critical minerals and the refining of critical minerals. And so this is what the U.S. wants to target ASAP in order to become self-sufficient and get out and kind of remove China's ace in the hole, so to speak. These are the minerals and the materials that are the ones that have been listed so far. Obviously rare earth elements, I think people have heard a lot of that by now. These are essential for things like, magnets and precision guidance systems, clean energy components. They're a big deal in advanced technology. Lithium, which is very central to battery technology, graphite, which is required for materials in advanced battery manufacturing and other, manufacturing, whether it's airframes or construction materials. Cobalt used in high density energy cells and jet engines. Nickel, which is critical for next generation batteries and corrosion resistant alloys. Gallium, germanium, antimony. These are all things that go into semiconductors and other photonic inputs. And then titanium and tungsten, which are core materials for whether it's defense, armor, aerospace, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the two that aren't on this list, that it would not shock me at all if at some point they show up on this list, are gold and silver. And as we've talked many, many times, we don't talk much about silver. Silver's not necessarily high on my list of needed assets. I know some people feel very differently about that. But gold, I think, is something that everybody needs, whether you're a government trying to be self-sufficient or whether you're an investor trying to create a robust portfolio. And gold has had a great year. I think it should be the cornerstone of everybody's portfolio. I'm going to remind everybody again that I recently joined the board of Monetary Metals. They have, I think, is what a very unique way to own gold, and it's a way to diversify your gold holdings, which gives you an opportunity to earn a yield on gold. And right now, the 10-year Treasury, I don't know, I think it pays a little over 4%. But in this program, you can actually own gold and get about 4% yield on your gold, and it gets paid in gold. I liked it enough that I joined the board of the company, and I opened an account and I add to it every month. And so I would encourage anybody who has gold and is looking for ways to diversify in the gold space to check out monetarymetals.com/Santiago. It'll give you all the background information, and they can help you get more information on there. But going back to this Office of Strategic Capital, the Office of Strategic Capital, I think, is one of the most important things to be created in a long, long time, because this Office of Strategic Capital is an entity within the Pentagon, and it's run by some former Wall Street expert. And I'll go through that in a minute. But the idea is, you're going to bridge a government power with private market efficiency and know-how and financial expertise. And a good example of this, again, this was just passed this year. The Big Beautiful Bill was passed on July 4th. 6 days later, MP Materials announced this was the first thing that came out of this program, where they announced a transformational public-private partnership with the Department of Defense, where they have, received funding from the government. And the reason that they targeted this company was because this is it's a rare earth element company. They received $150 million in loans from this program, and expands the heavy rare earth separation and magnet production at their facilities in California. And, I think this is a great example of how the Department of Defense and their credit program is partnering with private investment. And I think this is just getting started. I think this is going to be enormous. These types of programs are going to, I think, proliferate and grow. So far, this is the only program that has been announced. But again, this is the first year of its existence. And even though this is the MP Materials, the only one that's been publicly announced, I think there's probably more out there. And there's already $8.9 billion in requests from manufacturers across 38 other states. And I think what you have to remember here is the companies. So basically what's going to happen is these companies are going to get funding, but the government wants to buy their product. So it's not like the government's just going out and throwing money around. The government is basically helping to fund companies that are producing products that the government needs to be, or at least the country needs to be, self-sufficient and out from underneath the thumb of any adversary. This is kind of the chain of command, and I use that loosely, but jokingly, but it's also the truth, because it is a Pentagon project, and it starts with the president, as he's the head of the armed forces, and then it goes to the Secretary of Defense, which is Pete Hegseth, and then it goes to a guy named Steve Feinberg. He runs the Office of Strategic Capital. From there, it goes to the OSC director, who actually executes it. But Steve Feinberg is an important person to understand, because this is not your typical government employee. Steve Feinberg ran Cerberus. He founded Cerberus and ran Cerberus for a number of years now. Whoever is not familiar with Cerberus, Cerberus is one of the largest private equity firms in the world. I think they manage, 60 or $70 billion. Extremely successful, extremely hardcore. I would even go so far as to say these guys are extremely ruthless when it comes to business. So these are the guys you would want running your business if you were able to choose who it is. And not only that, but they have extensive experience across distressed assets, defense contracting, industrial base revitalization. And Feinberg has previously served on presidential advisory boards and national security institutes. And then, Cerberus itself has owned many major defense-related firms, whether it's DynCorp, Remington, Allied Aerospace, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is not just some guy that Trump plucked off the street to go put in there to hand out money. I would argue that Feinberg's combination of private equity experience and his government experience kind of makes him the ideal guy to sit here in the Office of Strategic Capital and figure out a ways to fund the companies that the government and the country needs in order to be self-sufficient. So essentially, the way this is going to work is, I'm sorry, let me jump through here. I didn't realize I didn't have that slide pulled up. I apologize, guys. But essentially, this is a slide on Cerberus. This is kind of what I just went through with his, kind of his history and the firm's history. But essentially, the way this is going to work is you've got four different institutions at the top. This is the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. It's called the DFC. The other one is the Export-Import Bank of the United States. The third one is the Department of Energy and their Loan Program Office. And then as well as the Pentagon's Office of Strategic Capital. And all of that flows down into the second level. And that second level are these investment managers. So these four entities are going to help fund these investment managers. So these investment managers, what they're going to do, they are going to go out and they are going to raise money from their investor base. So let's say that you go out and you raise $1 billion from your investors. Well, the government will then turn around and give you $1 billion to match it. So now you've got 2 billion. In some cases, you can get more than $1 billion. So in some cases, it can be more than 1-to-1. It can be up to 2-to-1. And so then you take these funds and you go out and you find the companies that are producing the products that the government wants to buy or needs to buy. And then you provide those company loans at very attractive financing, much more attractive financing than these companies could get in the private markets, because you're getting a government backstop essentially. And then the companies take that capital, they go and build out their capabilities, and then they produce their products, and then they sell it back to the government who financed them. This is essentially the biggest vendor financing scheme in the history of the world, and it's going to get bigger than it is now. Trust me on this. This is just getting started. But I think what makes this a little different is this middle row. Rather than the Pentagon and these other, government agencies just handing the money to the private market, it's going through the investment managers who have a little bit, I would argue, better business insight and financial insight than a typical government agency would have. And they will go and then invest in these companies, and they'll take board seats on these companies, and they will help these companies become successful. And then those companies will turn around and sell their products, not just to the government, but to the government, because the government and the country needs these products. So, this, like I said, this has just started this year. But it's already started. It started in January, February. The first loan was approved 2 or 3 months ago. The first idea is to build out domestic capacity and as well as within our allied countries, over the next 3 or 4 years. And then by the end of the decade, have the full utilization of the loan capacity. But I will tell you, the demand is, this $100 billion is going to be gone. It's already gone, and there's going to be more that comes behind it, and it's going to be gone too. The projects are just too important, and the need is too big, and so you've kind of got a supply and demand issue. And like I said, I think this is just getting started. Essentially, the strategic goals, and I've said this before, but you've got a situation where the United States feels like this is an existential issue for the United States. They have to strengthen their industrial base and their mineral independence. And they can't do that on their own. They need the help of the private market to do that. So they're bringing them in. They give them to accelerate the production in these critical areas, and basically trying to reinforce the United States as the technological leader and keep us at the forefront of competitive leadership. Let me see, what else do we got here? I mean, this ultimately is going to be the long-term vision, is that between allies, we are going to be self-sufficient. Whether that's traditional allies, whether it's new allies, this global divorce is going to happen. It it just is. And like I said, we've written about this a lot. We've talked about this a lot. The only question is how quickly it happens and whether it's amicable or whether it's brutal and ruthless. I don't know what the answer to either of those are, but it is going to happen. And I know that the United States is not just going to roll over and try to get the worst end of this deal. And so they are treating this very, very seriously. And I think the idea of partnering with investment managers, I think it is a much better idea than the government giving the capital to the companies directly. Now, I will say, even though I think this is going to be good for the country as far as becoming self-sufficient, I don't love the partnership between government and private industry. This is a very, very slippery slope. So anybody out there saying that this is a bad idea and this is going to end badly, I'm not going to argue too hard with you. But in the meantime, my job is to make money. And I think this is an investment trend that is going to be here for several years. And I think the government is serious about this. I don't think this is a one-time thing. I think this is just getting started. And I think that essentially at the end of the day, and this might sound dramatic, but I think they are taking this. Oh, actually, I know they are. They are taking this as seriously as they did last century in the Manhattan Project. This is the 21st century Manhattan Project. This is part of the big beautiful bill that is most important, and they are going to use all of the resources of the United States to be successful. So if you're betting against this, or if you're betting they're going to fail, you're betting against the guys that won World War II. You're betting against the guys that, created, split the atom and created the atomic bomb. You're betting against the team that was first to the moon. You're betting against the global hegemon that still has the biggest military in the world, despite all its problems. You're betting against the country that has the global reserve currency, and you're betting against a player. So you're sitting at a poker table and you're betting against the guy that can literally create chips out of thin air. And they're motivated to win this game. So I don't know how this is going to ultimately end, but what I do know is this is being taken very seriously. They are in it to win it, and they are not going to roll over and just give away what they have already accomplished. And they are going to do everything within their power to stay at the top of the pyramid. And so that's why I think this is potentially one of the greatest opportunities I've seen in 25 years of doing this. Again, I don't know how it's going to work out for sure. Maybe it will work great. Maybe it will not work, but I think it's going to work fantastic. And I think if I'm looking at it from the upside potential versus the downside risk involved of investing alongside this, I think the risk reward is one of the best risk rewards I've seen in my career. So I think this is going to be a huge thing. And, we are going to be invested in this. Now, this is not a sales pitch. I'm not saying that this is appropriate for you. I have no idea whether this makes sense for your portfolio or not. And, you would have to make that determination on your own. What I'm telling you is that I've been doing this for 25 years and we are going to be involved. We have a way to participate in this program and we are going to do so. So if you're an accredited investor and you want to hear about how we are doing it, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to you and tell you what we're doing. You can find contact information at santiagocapital.com. And if you like this topic that we've talked about today, we talk about this type of stuff quite a bit. We talk about the combination or the intersection of capital markets, geopolitics, and the madness of crowds quite often. We talk about it, we write about it, we do videos about it. And so if that seems like something that you'd be interested in, feel free to go to research.santiagocapital.com and sign up for one of our membership levels. We'd love to have you. So anyway, that's it for this week. We'll be back again next week. And in the meantime, maybe do a little research on the big, beautiful bill and the Office of Strategic Capital. I think the Office of Strategic Capital is a name you are going to be hearing a lot about in the years ahead. Okay, guys, have a great weekend. Bye.